you were a new lifter and you were doing anything other than training to failure, you're probably just horsing around, let's be honest. Look, there are some other factors that matter other than training intensity, which we'll get to later, but if you can only listen to one thing and only take one piece of advice, it would be to up your training intensity. And you know you can train a little bit harder, regardless of who's listening to this, regardless of how hard you're training, how many reps you think you're getting, how close you're getting to failure. You can definitely train harder. 100%. Everybody can train harder. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think you need to be getting reckless. If you legitimately are at failure, and the only way you can do more reps is to do some sort of cheat, some sort of half rep, some sort of uncontrolled assistance, then that's a no-go for me. But if you're doing 8 reps and you can get 2 more that are pretty clean, doesn't need to be, you whip out a protractor and it's the exact amount of range of motion, pretty clean. And that can be person to person. You could argue what's pretty clean, but you need to get pretty close to failure within 1 or 2 reps, which for most beginners means failure, because most beginners are going to say they're at failure when they have 3 or 4 reps left. So get to failure. Now, some people are like, oh, well, isn't the form more important? Is it the sets, the reps, the exercise? All that stuff is important. But if you could do, let's say you only get a certain amount of points. You're building a player. Those quarterbacks where you get $15 and you get to spend them on certain attributes. I would probably spend all the money I could on intensity. If I had $10 and I could go 10 out of 10 on intensity, I would go all out on intensity, because intensity makes up for a lot. Intensity makes up for low volume as a beginner. Now, once you get past the beginner phase and you're 3 or 4 years in and you're an intermediate, then everything needs to be kind of dialed in. But as a beginner, if your intensity is high and obviously your diet has to be decent outside the gym or you're not building any muscle, but your intensity is high inside the gym, you're going to make up for low volume. You're going to make up for questionable tempo. You're going to make up for so-so form. And we'll talk about form in a second, because I think it's pretty important as well to a degree. And you're going to make up for poor exercise selection. If it's a 10 out of 10 intensity, you can pretty much make anything work as a beginner. Now, the reason why I picked up form as the one thing that I'm like, okay, you might need to focus on, I don't necessarily think that the form needs to look good. Now, you can't be getting injured. If you're getting injured, obviously you're out of the gym and you're building no muscle. So you can't be a complete moron. You got to be reasonable. If something feels really fishy, if you record it and send it to your buddy who lifts and he's like, that looks whack, if you just look in yourself in the mirror and you're like, this doesn't look right, I'm not saying to do anything crazy to get more weight. What I say by form, and what I mean by form in this instance as a beginner, is your sets and reps week to week need to be consistent. Because if the only reason you're going up in weight week to week is you're changing the form to make it more malleable and you give yourself better leverages to move the weight, then it gets really murky on, did I progress or did I just change the angle and make it easier for myself to lift it? So you need to have consistent form. That's the most important. Intensity and consistent form so you can track it. Now, in terms of the actual form, I'll give you an example on something where it's like, great form would be ideal, but if you have good form, it's okay. A back squat. Let's say you're squatting with a barbell on a leg press, like whatever. You're doing some sort of squatting motion. Obviously going all the way down to where your calves touch your hamstrings or you get as low as possible, that's ideal. Duh. But some people aren't comfortable. Some people don't have knee mobility. Some people just don't want to. If you can get to a 90-degree squat and you do that consistently, balls to the walls, and you always get to 90 and you're never shortchanging it, you're going to build muscle. You're going to build a lot more muscle than the guy that goes full range of motion and kind of half-asses his intensity. So I want to make this very clear that intensity trumps all. Have reasonable form, nothing insane to where you're going to, you're bouncing the bar off your chest on a bench press and your chest has bruises on it. If you're doing something stupid, then yeah, you're going to get injured. Don't be an idiot. Have consistent form and train all out, and you are going to be covered for a couple years. Now, once you've been lifting for a little while, you got to start connecting some more pieces. You can't just rely on intensity. And as you move more weight, higher intensity is going to be more difficult.